All right. Shalom. Hello, everybody. Nice to see everyone and hope you're doing well. Okay, this is fun for me because people who have been to my shiurim before, we rarely talk about halacha. So it's quite fun for me to talk about halacha because I really get to do it. And these are very exciting and interesting areas. I by no means am a world expert on halacha in general, nor the halachot of Eretz Israel, all the different kinds of things, but I know a bit, so I wanted to share with you what I can, and I am excited to do that with you and to learn with you guys. Okay, so basically, just in terms of the structure, what I was thinking was that we would go pretty much straight to the Terumot and Maaserot section because I think in many ways that's the most challenging, and I don't want to not get to that. So we'll do that, and then which a little bit in theory, a little bit in practice, and then we'll open it up for all different kinds of questions, whatever you want. Ellie sent me a couple already, so we can cover them. But if anyone else has questions, we can also cover them. Plus, what I want to say is, obviously, you can ask questions along the way as well. You can also make comments. You can express joy or sadness or anger, whatever you like. It's all is fair game over here. Okay, fine. So what I'm gonna do, yeah, I'll share in a second. But in the meantime, okay, fine. So basically, there's this thing called Terumot Maaserot tithing. Right, so what's that all about? What that is all about is that basically the way that Rev Shirky has this nice turn of phrase that in outside of Israel, outside of Eretz Israel in Chutz La'aretz, so God is Elokei Hashemayim. He's the God of the heavens. And in Eretz Israel, he's Elokei Hashemayim ve'Elokei Haaretz. He's the God of the heaven and the earth. Uh, what is he talking about? What he's talking about is that obviously you can have a relationship to God everywhere, but in many ways, the physical world and the spiritual world have a little bit of tension with one another, and in many ways, you kind of are moving away. In as much as you're connecting to the spiritual, you're kind of like moving away from the physical. But in Israel, it's not like that. You go to the physical, you go to the earth, and you find halacha, you find kedusha and different things that we are interacting with. So just like in all the rest of the world, everywhere in the world, when you want to eat an animal, if you want to eat an animal, then you have to prepare it in a certain way. You have to do shechita and you have to prepare it. So in Israel, even the plants are almost like on that level. The plants are almost like up one level, and you also have to outside of Israel, it's safe. That's the one thing you can do is you can just eat fruit and like you're safe, right? But in Israel, nothing's safe. Why is nothing safe? Because everything is elevated in its level of kedusha, and so the plants also just almost like animals in the rest of the world also need to be prepared, etc., in a certain way. So that's basically this whole idea of why we're doing anything with plants. So what are the different kind of things we do? So there's a lot to say. I'm going to be quite practical about this and kind of cut to the chase. But if you want to ask questions about kind of the context and stuff like that, please do. But basically, the main thing that you'll come across in Israel is this idea of Terumot and Maaserot that most fruits and vegetables need to be tithed. You need to take some stuff off them and say some stuff before you're able to eat them. If you are using food with a reliable hechsher on it, a kashrut certificate, then that's meant to have been done for you. Moreover, let me just say Ellie asked me also, what do you do if you go into a store and there's no certificate whatsoever? So if you find that the produce, if you can usually see labels of where the produce is from. So if it's from outside of Israel, so then also that's not an issue. So if it has a good, reliable certificate, whatever it is you want to rely on, that's up to you. I can speak to you about that if you want, but whatever you want to rely on. Whatever is reliable for you, then it's fine. If the produce is from outside of Israel, then it's also fine. But if, for example, for one reason or another, you're not sure what the story is with this. For example, maybe it's from a hechsher, but it's not something you would usually rely on. So I'm not sure where Terumot and Maaserot taken from the fruits. I've just got this. Yeah, good question. Comes in just a second. So if you're not sure, that's one option. For example, or just for some other reason, you're just not sure. You just don't understand. Or, for example, you're sure that there's no Terumot Maaserot being taken from it. The only way you can really know that is probably if you pick the fruit yourself, because it's quite possible that anything which ends up on Israeli shelves has had Terumot Maaserot taken from it. Even if there's no hechsher there, it's quite possible that that was done anyway, and they just haven't paid for the Kashrut certification, but it was actually done. So basically, anything you buy in a store, even without a certificate, is sort of at least you're not sure. Then in terms of Arab farmers or non-Jewish farmers, so it's a little bit complicated. Basically, everyone has there are different opinions on this stuff. The simple answer is that, from what I understand, you do not need to take Terumot Maaserot. We're not really going to talk about Shemitah today, by the way, but in another, I think, 3 years, it's going to be Shemitah. That's a whole different shiur. But there's basically it's like a bit of a controversial point. Some people are kind of saying different things about that. So I think, from what I understand, the simple view is that you don't need to worry about Terumot Maaserot. In practice, it's not usually going to be so clear to you if you literally go to an Arab farmer, then that will be clear to you. But even then, he might be working for a Jewish landowner, so it's quite hard to find cases where you're absolutely sure that either that like that you'd be in such a situation. So most situations you're going to come across are either fine because either it's from outside of Israel or it's got a reliable hechsher, or you're not sure. So most situations is you're going to come across. So for example, I was with my family in Herzliya and didn't know anything about the store. We went into a random store, bought some fruits and vegetables. Didn't know, I couldn't find a what's it called? A certificate of any sort. So wasn't sure. So I took Terumot Maaserot, which I'll tell you about, which we'll go through the procedure now. But that's like an overview of the kinds of times when you might need to do such a thing. Any kind of broad points up until this point. And then what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to do it. Okay, so this can come up. Okay, fine. So let me share with you a screen for a second. All right, let me see if this is going to work. Okay, tell me if you can see this. You can see that? Hold on.
I don't know about the others. I can see the page, but it is a bit small.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm going to zoom in a minute, but I just want to show you the whole thing. So basically, no, okay, we're good. You can see it. It's a good start. Okay, so basically, this here is practical guide for separating Terumot and Maaserot. It's going to be like very, very, what's it called? Almost like workshoppy. This is going to be like a very practical thing. I find these kind of things hard to get the hang of. So I only really got the hang of this after doing it a few times. I think that probably some people are, get things like first time, but I imagine basically the first time or two you'll do it, you'll be like having to look carefully at this piece of paper, but then after that, like, you'll get into it, and it's really good to be able to do this because most people don't really know how to do this, and you can help a lot of people out. Like, we had like family members at that Herzliya thing. We had family members who were coming and visiting Israel, and they were stuck. So it was cool to be able to do that for them and like help them out. So you'll be the most popular person in your friend group, that's for sure, if you know how to do this. Right. So this is the thing. So anyway, I just zoomed out for a second to show you. It's basically 7 steps over here. And I took this, as you can see at the bottom, I took this primarily from Rabbi Moshe Bloom. He is a legend. He works for something called Machon Torah Va'aretz, the Institute for the Torah and the Land, and they do very, very interesting, all kinds of interesting things regarding mitzvot Tatuliyot Ba'aretz, mitzvot which are specifically related to the land of Israel. And also, he's really good, and he writes great articles. So I adapted it a little bit, but basically, this is really primarily his work. So this is the thing. I can send you this. Maybe I'll even send you. Maybe there's a healthy thing if I send you now. Maybe I'll send you in the chat or something like that. So you've just got a copy. And then I guess if anyone doesn't download it or forgets, you can just ask me after and I can send it to you. Okay. Sending it to you guys now. Okay, that should be sent. So even just the final point before actually starting and looking at this cucumber and seeing what we're going to do with it, right? This is going to be very helpful. I gave you here a link to what's called Become a Member of Beit HaOtzar. So that is an initiative of the Machon Torah Va'aretz. And it's going to save your life, basically, because what they do is they sort out, there's a lot of bits and pieces in Terumot and Maaserot. You'll see there's this kind of thing which you need to give to a levy. There's this kind of thing which you need to give to a poor person. There's this kind of thing which you need to redeem on a coin. They basically sort out all of that for you. So the procedure becomes much simpler if you become a member of that. I think it's 80 shekels a year for a. I don't work for them. Like I have no stake in this, but it's just helpful. It's 80 shekels a year for a normal person, a normal Yisrael, and apparently if you're a Kohen or a Levi, you get it for 40 shekels a year. So that's like a cool thing. That's like feels authentic. So um, so what's the point is that you'll see places along the way where you have to fiddle with different things. It's basically going to take away all the issues for you if you just join that. So I'd highly recommend that. I found it very helpful. And there's the link there if you want to do that. So let's go for it over here. So step number one. All right, here we go. So I'm going to show you this thing. I've got a cucumber, right? I'm going to try and show you. This is a cucumber on a pillow. Just in case you need to know. Right, so that's what it is. So here, I'm just going to go through it literally step by step with you. Okay. So imagine this one, it was bought with a good hechsher, but just imagine you just bought this from a random shop. You don't know the story. So this is what you do. So number one, so set aside a little more than 1% of each type of produce if there are several types, because you could be dealing with, you can't see my face, so I'm just wiggling this thing. You could be doing it with multiple kinds of produce at once. That's totally fine. You can do that. So make sure that the 1% plus that you set aside, along with the rest of the produce, is in front of you and in close proximity to each other. So that basically means if you have here and oranges and apples and whatever, so what you're going to do is you're going to take a little more than 1% of each thing. So here, like I'm just going to do this. Okay, good. There you go. Plenty more than 1% over here. So that's one thing that you're going to do. So, and you would do that for every kind of thing that you're dealing with. Okay, so that's step one. Okay, step two, also just stop me at any time if it's getting lost or whatever. Okay, step two is as follows. So only if the produce is definitely tevel, i.e. you know for sure that no, I think it's meant to be that no one separated Terumot Maaserot from it. So then make the following bracha, blessing, before you recite the full text. So you'd say, if you were doing that, let's say you bought it from, let's say you just went, you're a farmer, or you went picking fruit or something like that. So then you'd know for sure. Most other cases, you're not going to know for sure. So I'm not sure if I've ever said this bracha. But if you were in a case where you know for sure that you're definitely dealing with something which needs Terumot Maaserot, then you would say this bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu v'sutav, v'tzivanu lafrish Terumot Maaserot. So you do that. So far, so good. Yeah, Nathan.
If you've got no idea if that's happened, would you say it, or because you don't know and there's a doubt that it might have been separated and therefore you don't say it?
Good question. So basically, the rule is safek bracha lahakel. Safek bracha lahakel. So basically, if you're ever not sure whether you need to make a bracha, you don't make the bracha. So that would be the case over here. So if you're not sure, if that's what you asked, sorry, is that what you asked? Meaning, if you're not sure whether you need to make the bracha, yeah. So you would do. It's not one of those cases where the more the better. The safer thing in brachot is to not say the bracha. So that's the thing in general. In fact, so that's what you do. That's stage two. Okay. If you do that, which I say I don't think I've ever done that, but it could be the case. I don't do enough fruit picking, basically, I guess is the moral of the story over here. Okay, next. So recite the following text for separating Terumot and Maaserot. So this is basically there's going to be a lot of pointing, because in terms of separating, you'll see some of the things you don't need to physically separate. Some of it you will. Some of the things you'll just need to designate, and you'll see. So basically, number one. So I should give you one more word of introduction before this. Sorry, let me just give you one more thing. Is that I can do it as a quiz. Anyone know what are the different kinds of things that you're going to need to separate in this process? Can you name any of them? Okay, fine. Anyone want to jump in? Okay, good. So, I mean, not good that you don't want to jump in. You can still jump in. If you remember, it's like, oh, I remember I was thinking of that one. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is something called truma. So truma is the first thing, and that primarily goes to a Kohen. The Kohen themselves, again, we'll see. In practice, it's not going to go into a Kohen today. You're going to put it in a plastic bag. But in theory, it goes to a Kohen, and the Kohen will separate something from that called Trumat Maaser. Maaser mina maaser, basically, he's going to separate from the thing that you give him something else. This is all in principle. And then the next thing that you'll separate is something called Maaser Rishon. That in principle goes to a Levi. And then the next thing that you'll separate, there's one more thing, and it depends on the year. So some years you'll separate what's called Maaser Sheni, which you give to a poor, which you are meant to take to Yerushalayim. So you take that to the old city. Some of you guys are pretty nearby. Take that to the old city and would eat it. Again, in principle, or you can redeem it meaning you take the kedusha which is in it and put it onto a coin, and then you'll keep that coin safe. Or that'll be either Maaser Sheni, or other years you do Maaser Ani, which is that bit you're going to give to a poor person. So this is all in principle. There's three things that you need to do, and the last one's going to change depending on the year. First is Truma, second is Maaser Rishon, third is either Maaser Sheni or Maaser Ani. Those are the three things. So that is what, and hopefully, based on me, that's going to be rebuilt. We're going to be doing this in a much more of a tangible way soon. But in the meantime, we're going to do it like this. It sounds complicated, but actually ends up much, much simpler. So this is follows. Hello. All right. It says, what I'm about to say applies to each type of produce separately. So the first thing you say is that the 1% that is on the lower side of the produce that I have set aside remains tevel for the time being. So what's that? You've set aside that. You set aside 1%. 1% of that on the lower side of it is going to remain tevel. It's going to remain untithed for the meantime. Okay. Then it says the rest of what I have set aside is truma gedola for all the produce. Okay. So what does that mean? That means the rest of what I've set aside, so that's all the way over here, is called Truma Gedola, what I called Truma before, also called Truma Gedola. So basically the bulk of this item over here is going to be Truma Gedola, and in principle would be going to a Kohen right now. Okay, the next step. The next thing over here, just get the mouse there, just there. Okay, so the 1% I mentioned, which is on the bottom of this piece, and the 9%, another 9%, which is on the upper side of the produce, this main part of the produce over here, is Maaser Rishon. So basically a little bit of this and a little bit of that is for a in principle for a Levi. That's Maaser Rishon. Okay. Then the 1% that I previously set aside is Terumot Maaserot. So this part over here becomes Terumot Maaser, and then it says over here another 9%, which is on the lower part of the produce. That's again this main part of the produce over here is Maaser Sheni, and if the year requires Maaser Ani, it's Maaser Ani. You can calculate the years. Basically, you can calculate the years if you want. I can give you a whole list. But honestly, I think the whole idea for me is just like to make it easy. Because if you make it hard, you're just not going to do it. At least that's how I work. I'm just not going to do it. Right? It's too complicated for me. It's already complicated enough. So I just make it easy. I just don't really get into like, depending on which year it is, you just do it in the conditional way. If it's this kind of year, you do this. If this kind of year, you do that. So basically, we just said a whole thing. Honestly, as I say, you're going to basically need to practice it to like get the hang of it and get the feel of it. But essentially, what we've done over here is the outcome of everything that we said is this whole part over here is going to be Kohen stuff, which we'll see we're gonna bag and throw away. Some of it was Truma Gedola directly to the Kohen. Some of it was Terumot Maaser, the thing that the the Levi separates, and that goes to a Kohen. And then some of the stuff which is over here was for the Levi. Some of the stuff which was over here was either Maaser Ani for the poor or Maaser Sheni, the thing which you're meant to principally take and go to Jerusalem. But essentially, we can set this part aside now. This is going to be really nothing much to do with us. And what we're going to do now is going to do a little bit of redeeming on the little parts of the produce, which are what we are going to basically want to eat, but are not yet for us. They're either for a Levi or for a poor person or something like that. Again, just to clarify, like it'll take time to get the hang of it, but basically, if you just read the thing, like you'll get the hang of it. Okay. Moving forward, so only if the produce is definitely subject to Maaser Sheni and undoubtedly Tevel, so recite the following blessing. So in order to know that, number one, you're going to need to know that the produce is indeed definitely Tevel, so you picked it from a thing, and you'll need to know the exact year that you're dealing with. Again, most of the time, that's not going to come up. If it comes up, so, Ashrecha, go for it. But if it doesn't come up, don't worry about it. I don't think I've ever done this as well. So you would say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shekid shema v'satav, v'tzivanu liftot ma'aser sheni. What you're going to do is you're going to do what's called pidyon to redeem this ma'aser sheni. Okay. What is the next thing? So recite the following text and redeem the produce on a coin. So even in cases where it is unclear whether the produce is subject to Maaser Sheni, meaning even if you don't know that the thing is Maaser Sheni, which is most cases, so you're doing this, you'll see it's like if it's Maaser Sheni, then I've taken care of it. So what will that basically mean is yes, I'm just going to point to this. So we were pointing to, I think it was here on the bottom, 9% on the bottom half of here. We're going to say as follows. Over there, we're going to say, what I have designated as Maaser Sheni plus a quarter of its value is now redeemed by transferring its sanctity to a pruta and a quarter's worth of my designated coin. This redemption applies to each type of produce in accordance to its level of obligation. So basically, just what you're saying there is that you're saying something which in principle was meant to be taken and eaten in the old city of Jerusalem. What you're saying is that I've now taken the Kedusha away from that. I can now consume that wherever I want. And I've transferred the Kedusha, the sanctity, onto a coin. Now, if you are doing that with a real coin, so then, make sure to not just use that coin for anything. That coin's now got Kedusha on it. So put it away in a safe place. 10 agorot is fine, by the way. So, a pruta is the value. If you want to know, a pruta is like the lowest halachic monetary value. A pruta is something like 5 agorot or something like that. So meaning even a 10 agorot coin, even the minimum coin that we have is enough for that. So you could do that. Or what I just do is just so much easier. You sign up to that Beit Ozer thing, so they have your coin and they take care of it. So it puts my mind at ease because I'm like, oh my, what if I lose the coin? And like my kids are going to take it and they're going to throw it. So like, you just don't need to worry about any of that stuff. They've got your coin, so you have in mind that I'm redeeming the thing onto the coin which is over there, and they're going to deal with all the details of that. So basically, what have we dealt with so far? We've dealt with all the coin sections over there. We've dealt with all the Maaser, what's it called? Maaser Sheni sections. So now you can eat that. And basically the only thing, it doesn't really explain it here, but I'll just say that basically there's another thing which sort of happens automatically, is that the thing which was either meant to be for a poor person or for the Levi, which was part of the things that you set aside on the produce that you do actually want to eat. Basically, again, in principle, you would either give that to a poor person or a Levi. If you join the Beit HaOtzer thing, then they just sort that out for you. They give the monetary equivalent to it's pretty cool. Like they give to they have Leviim and they give to Leviim and they give to poor people from the subscription that you give them. So basically, it's just so easy. You just sort it all out. The last thing over here, again, you're very rarely going to actually come across this, but something called Neter Avai. So if the tree was in its 4th year of growth, then I'll just read it to you. So if the fruit was undoubtedly Neter Avai and Tevel, so recite the following blessing and proceed to redeem the fruit on a coin. Again, I've never said this. You'll basically never know. You'll never know that a fruit is, unless you're a farmer. Please, farmers are good. So I don't mean to this being farmer, please, we should all go be farmers. But in as much as none of us are yet farmers, so you're never going to know this because you're never going to know the year of the growth of the tree. But in principle, if you knew, then you could say the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu liftot neter avai, and then you'd basically say the following formula. We say this anyway because we don't know the year that the tree is in its growth. So we say if I have fruit of neter avai, the fruit plus a quarter of its value is now redeemed by transferring its sanctity to a pruta and a quarter's worth of my designated coin. This redemption applies to each type of produce in accordance to its level of obligation. So basically what's happened is a lot of words. And as I say, you've got the PDF, it'll be a case of just kind of practicing it and going through it a little bit. But the bottom line is what's just happened over here is you've got two things. This thing is not for us. This whole thing is yours. You can eat this. So let's just read that last line. So after reciting the formulas above, either bury or double bag the portion that you set aside and place it in the garbage. So that's what I'm going to do. I brought you double bag as props over here, two lovely bags. If you want, you can have biodegradable bags. There's nothing obligatory about halacha to be bad to the environment. Just that is what I have available. All right, so you can do that. Double bag, and this will go in the garbage. If you want to bury it, you can also bury it. And I'll just finish this one thing, Nathan, and then basically you can eat the rest. And what I wrote here, Rabbi Bloom didn't write it in this way, but I just wrote it because it's helpful, is that Beit Otzar will take care of the rest for you, because it's true, there's some stuff to go to Levi, they'll take care of it, some stuff to go to a poor person, they'll take care of it. So this, basically, you can now enjoy your delicious cucumber. It's mutter. You can eat it. It's yummy. So that's that. Nathan, yeah.
It might be a bit of a weird question, but could you, rather than put it in the bin or bury it, could you give it to animals?
That's a good question. Actually, not sure. That's a good question. Let me look. I'll try and look that up for you. Let me see.
It has to be the animal that belongs to a coin.
In principle, good shout. Meaning,
So
coin? No.
Like
Yeah.
And I chuck something onto the roof that they
A
eat.
bird's gonna eat. Yeah. I don't think so, but it's interesting. Ellie, you say it wouldn't work basically because it would have to belong to a coin, and
Believe so, but no, I believe that's what one of the zoos here effectively sold their animals to a kohen, so you could be more makel. You can't give the food directly to a kohen, but you can give it to a Safek kohen's animal or something like that. I believe.
Very good. Wow.
I could be wrong.
That's great. I'll double check that for you, but that sounds correct. I remember the zoo thing as well. Yeah, that's a great shout. So, but in short, it sounds like probably not for what you're thinking of, Nathan, which is to basically throw it out the window and the birds will take care of it. But maybe there will be a way to give it to a Cohen's animal. And basically, just to clarify, also the reason that we're not giving it, I'm saying why you're not giving it to a Cohen is why you're throwing it in the bin. Basically, because there's a whole interesting issue that we're not really sure who are Kohanim today. So don't worry, if you're a Cohen and you're on this call, we still believe you that you're a Kohen. It's just that for some halachot, we'll still give you an aliyah. So give you the first one. It's still going to let you lead benching. But for something which relates to kedusha, so it's like very, very strict. So you have to be like absolute 100% sure. And so we usually don't kind of do that for this. So that is, where is that? I can unshare, I think. Okay, so that's that. So take a breath. That's a lot. But I think basically, as I say, I've said it a few times, but just because I'm so like this, like you'll get the hang of it once you do it more. But at least now you've got the resource. You've seen a little bit what it looks like. Obviously, if you have questions about that, you can come to me at any time. But yeah, Sarah,
I just wanted to confirm again. Let's say I've got 20 cucumbers.
Yeah.
Yes.
So with 20 cucumbers, what do I do?
Yeah. Does anyone want to take a guess? I mean, yeah, Nathan.
I presume it's like this, it's similar. I presume it would be like similar to like taking 1/20th, kind of similar to same. So it's like one cucumber or something like that.
Yeah. So you could take less. What were you going to say, Nathan?
No, I mean, I was thinking either you've got to cut a small piece from each cucumber, or could you designate one cucumber?
No, so that you could do. Yeah. You can designate one, but even more than that, it wouldn't even be a whole one, because let's just do some math for a second. 20 cucumbers that means what's 1% of 20 is, this is a really weird thing. You need to take 0.2 of a cucumber. Is that correct? No, I'm going crazy. What's the, let's say, what was 1%?
10%
Khani,
two, and then
10% of 20 cucumbers.
two, and then it's like you think of half of it, right? Like just do it that way. Okay, does that make sense?
Say again, Khani?
Yeah.
Just okay. If you have 20, right?
Yeah.
What's 10% of 20?
10% of 20, 2. Yes.
Right. And then just 1% of that. But I wanted to ask, instead of going by the number of cucumbers, does it go by the weight or the number?
Yeah, it does go by weight, volume. It does go by that. But I mean, so yeah, if you've got ones which are of different sizes, fair point, then you'll have to adjust for that. But basically what you're shooting for is 1% of the produce. So I've got myself very confused over here. But basically what we need to do is Khani's formula. But basically what you need to do is 1% of the produce. That's what it's a little more than 1% of the produce. So if you want to take one whole cucumber, then you've done plenty because you've taken, that's 5%. That's 5%. Right. So that's more than enough. But yeah, you're right. You don't need to take from each one. If you're doing cucumbers and tomatoes, or tomatoes, but I prefer to do tomatoes, then you'll want to take 1% of the cucumbers and also 1% of the tomatoes. But again, no, it doesn't need to be for every fruit. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense?
Yeah, totally. No, I just wanted to make sure because obviously I'm just thinking I'm making a salad. My question also was just because the other day I bought some produce on Tuesday. There's like this shop near here that sells like produce, and they clearly weren't Jewish. But I wasn't 100% sure, so I did do it. Like, but I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing, but like I did. So I just wanted to confirm, that I did it right, essentially.
Yeah, I think that would be the way. And in terms of the Jews owning the shop, it would be sort of neither here nor there because the determination of whether, maybe this is what you meant, but whether something needs to have Terumot and Maaserot taken is much earlier in the chain. It's really about who grows it and who owns the land.
No, this is a farm. This is a farmer coming to sell their produce. That's why.
Very interesting. Okay, so yeah, so
But I should have asked, but I was clearly the only religious person there, and I felt uncomfortable asking.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, so yeah, but that's the thing you can do as well. Also saves you social awkwardness if you want.
No, I actually decided that next time I would ask because I think it's a great conversation. We're living in Eretz Israel, so I should be asking that question.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you can also save you, like I'll say, for example, if you at work, right? So if you are in a work environment where if the work environment where they're doing all the hechshers that you want, so it's great. If you're in a work environment when they're not, but they have like, my wife has it, so they have fruits and stuff. So, but they don't have the same kind of like kashrut standards in the office. So then, in principle, I've never managed to get her to actually do this, but in principle, you can eat the fruit. You just make sure to take, and you don't need to do it in a very public way, whatever. Take it to your desk, do a little thing, get it on your computer screen, and yeah, it can help. Right. So what if it's a salad that someone already made? So, in fact, a good question, Rina. So you would still need to take, even if something is prepared. Now, if you're talking about a person, it gets into a slightly different issue of, trusting other people's kashrut. So I know it's very complicated, but the general rule is you can trust other people's kashrut if it makes sense to trust their kashrut. Like if they are people who are basically keeping halacha, in general, you can just trust their kashrut. If you happen to know that they literally don't know anything about laws of kashrut, they want to keep halacha, they just don't know. So then, okay, they're not. Then be subtle, don't offend them. But then you would put a little bit aside on your plates, and everyone should print if it's on. You can do it on. I should mention though, there is a little bit of an issue on Shabbos. You're not really meant to separate Terumot and Maaserot on Shabbos, so it would be maybe a little bit of an issue. If you wanted, you could. This is like pretty involved at this stage, but you could. you could set it aside and take it with you and deal with it later. I mean, I don't know who's going to do that. But, you know, ideal. Look, if you're really in a situation where you really don't think you're at someone's table and you really don't think you can rely on their kashruts, probably stay away from the vegetables. But most of the time, you can. Again, obviously, it depends on what society you're in, what groups you're hanging out with. But most of the time, you can assume that it's okay. You can assume that it's okay. But in principle, if someone made a salad from it, then it is an issue. I read today, even if they made a soup. Take Terumot and Maaserot from a soup. Pretty amazing, eh? But again, if it comes up. Does that, Rena, that answer the question? Okay, let's see. Thanks. Okay, right. And okay, so if you're doing fruit picking, you can eat the produce at the field. Correct. Right. Thanks for clarifying. So when I was talking about fruit picking, there are a few things. Maybe let's bring this in. So there are a few things which are like exceptions, which just don't require at all, which are like surprising exceptions. So we talked about a few big ones already, but a couple of small ones. So one is if you're just eating off the tree, so then you don't have to take Terumot and Maaserot. You know, we're not talking today about bugs, by the way. It's a whole other discussion. That's another time when you might need to just think a little bit more about fruits or whatever that your vegetables that you're eating. But I'm just ignoring that point right now. So putting that aside, so in principle, yeah, if you go apple picking, you want to eat an apple off the tree, no problem. What I was more talking about is if you go apple picking and then you take a bunch of apples home to you and put it in your fruit basket, so then you do need to take Terumot and Maaserot. So yeah, that's a great point. That can happen, and you can do that, and it's not like b'diavad. It's not like a bad thing to do. You can go ahead and eat something off a tree as long as you're allowed to. As long as you're allowed to. As long as you're not like eating someone else's property or something like that. Another interesting exception, by the way, this is helpful to know. This saves me. Is most herbs, basically anything which is not eaten by itself, but is just used for seasoning. So you don't need to take Terumot and Maaserot from that. This is very helpful because someone who, like, this was one of those cases where someone who didn't know as much halacha, or at least as much Israeli halacha, whatever, and did make a dish for us and we're like, oh, well, where'd you get these herbs? And she said, oh, just I picked them up from the garden. And then we're like, yeah, just prepared the whole thing, a dish. I'm like, what do we do? And it was Shabbos, so couldn't do anything about it if it was an issue. But it's fine actually, because I can't remember what those herbs were. I'm really bad with remembering the names for these things, but it was one of those things which you would never eat on its own. You only use it to season other things. So that's fine. So if something you do eat by itself, like I think parsley or whatever, you do eat parsley. But something which is like black pepper or anything like that, you don't need to worry about. So can we buy spices from anywhere without a hechsher, like in the shuk from any stand? Great question. In principle, if it's one of those things which isn't eaten, so that will be most of the spices. Now you're coming to mention it, it should be okay. You'd probably, I'm not really up in the only thing I'll put this. The only thing you need to worry about with those is that if the spices are out on display, I wasn't going to get into the bugs, but just while we're talking about buying from the shuk, if the spices are out on display, this can be true in a shop, by the way, as well, and they're just out there, and you're going to scoop them in, or they're going to scoop them in and put them in a bag for you, then you often do need to check for bugs because they've been out in the open for a long time. Saying that, if you're, but that's a different point. That's bugs. But in terms of Terumot and Maaserot, yeah, you should be okay. You should be okay, and certainly if something is prepackaged and it's solid, in like a, what's it called? It's like packed up, like airtight or whatever. Then yeah, so then you're totally fine. Yeah, it's good. It's nice to be able to buy from the shuk. It's quite hard to buy from the shuks with all different issues, so it's nice to be able to buy something from the shuk. Yeah. Okay. There's probably a million other things we can say, but any other questions that you guys had in mind? Any other pressing things? I'm trying to think if, Ellie, were there any other things that you asked that we didn't cover?
Possibly, can I just double check with the herbs and spices again? So, say you don't need to take truma at all, or you do it without a bracha?
No. Most things you don't need to take at all, because if it's only if you know that it's something which is only made for a taste, then it's fine. As I'm saying, there's some things which are spices. I mean, I know you wouldn't call it a spice, but there's some things which people use for seasoning, but you would actually eat. So I'm thinking parsley is an example of it. There are other. I'm not, unfortunately, like really good enough at cooking to know all these things, but you have to.
I was thinking about mint. Mint is something you make tea from, so like it is a standalone thing.
Perfect example. But for example, tea leaves themselves, so you don't need to take because you don't eat them. You use them to season the water. But you're right, mints, you should take. So it just it depends on the herbs and spices. But there's a lot of room to be lenient with herbs and spices. Yeah.
I guess the other question I had was about like homegrown produce. If you like, if it's in a pot plant and that sort of.
Yeah. So I just need to remind myself what was the story with that again. So basically, from what I understand, it's basically like this: anything which is in a plant, which is in the ground, so in a plant pot, which is on the ground. There's difference rabbinic Torah level, but basically it's like it's in a pot on the ground, on the the earth. Then you do need to take. But if it is in your house, as far as I understand, you do not need to, unless you live on the earth, which is also fine. But you don't need to take hydroponic. You don't need to take. I did read somewhere, I didn't understand it though, that from greenhouses you do need to take. I didn't really understand that. It didn't really seem to make sense to me. So maybe I need to check into that. But in principle, so if it's in a plant pot, but it's on the ground, on the earth, so it doesn't help you. But as far as I understand, if it is in your house, you can. If anyone knows differently, because the thing about the greenhouses confused me. I just don't really understand that. So you can let me know if you have any further insights on that. But that, from as far as I understand, if you're growing yourself, especially without, there's some people who grow. What do people grow from, like these avocado? To like take an avocado seed and they grow stuff from it. Anyway, that's also fine. Don't need to worry about that. Might need to worry about personality issues. We don't need to worry about Terumot and Maaserot. Okay, that's a lot for now. I know there's a million more things to talk about, but I said that we're going to finish around now, so let's do that. Nice to see everyone. Hope you're all well. If you have any follow-up questions, you're obviously welcome to contact me. If you want any kind of like bigger picture follow-up things, you're welcome to contact me.
It was so useful, Isaac. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, fine. Great. I'm glad. It's hard to tell because I think the workshop is for sure ideal. Like if you challenge yourself to like go through it physically. Because just like the kinetic learning is like different level, but I'm glad it was of some use. So in the meantime, as I was saying, a lot of this stuff today is rabbinic or Suffolk, so please God, home soon, new Beis HaMikdash, and everything's going to be Torah level. Most of the Jews are going to be in Israel, and we're all going to be happily ever after. Okay, all the best, guys.
Thank you. Have a lovely week, everyone.
Cheers. All the best.